welcome to the eighth and final episode of Earth Share. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our partners Arlington Garden and Pasadena, and to LA Nature for All for helping support and make this program possible. Today, to close us out, we are having Marcos Trinidad join us. Marcos is currently the Center Director for Audubon Center at Debs Park. Previously, he's worked with youth through Audubon to train them to become environmental stewards and help with tree restoration through Northeast Trees and Tree People. We are so happy to have Marcos join us, and we will on Debs Park. Hi, Marcos.
What's up? What's happening? How y'all doing?
Doing good. How are you?
You know, I'm surviving this heat.
Yeah, it's hot over here.
Trying to make the most of it. So yeah, just taking it easy, staying hydrated. What's up with you? How's everyone doing?
We're doing good, thanks.
I like that you have a spot outside. We're inside with no air conditioning right now, and I think it looks nicer where you are.
Yeah, I found some shade. I was inside most of the morning, just trying to prepare for our next week. We're going to be homeschooling the kids, and school starts tomorrow. So just trying to get everything ready, trying to mentally prepare. But now we're outside, and the kids are trying to enjoy some outdoor time, and it's like, we're either gonna be sweating inside or sweating outside.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready for I actually start teaching classes in another week. So we're doing our 2 weeks of professional development to try to get our heads around what that's gonna look like. I teach in a garden in Pasadena, and we're doing that virtually. So I want to be at least in the garden. So I'm trying to troubleshoot that with, all the wires and signals and all of that.
So at least someone's in the garden.
Yeah, I've been at the garden all summer.
Yeah.
I know unfortunately, a lot of garden teachers were locked out of their gardens. As soon as everybody went home, they got locked out. I've fortunately been able to keep going.
Wow.
And we've even had some volunteers more recently. So it's going okay. I'm just trying to figure out, what's it look like for the kids at home who are experiencing the garden through their computer.
Yeah.
See.
It's definitely strange times we're living in. That's one of the reasons why we decided to take that leap and homeschool ourselves. I mean, that was one of the things, and I was talking to Paloma, we were talking about this, where it's just like, okay, all the things that I appreciate about public school are now taken away, and now it's mainly, okay, how are we going to set up the kids to be able to behave in front of a screen and learn. So we're excited, and we're gonna try to see how little screen time we can give them through this, and just really take that time to again be out in the garden and understand that these temperatures that we're reaching, and how to live with it, how to adapt, how to almost embrace it in a way that can teach us like how to get through this phase. So we're excited for that journey, and thanks again for having me on. This is cool.
Thanks. It makes me think about how all of us at botanical gardens and nature centers are trying to provide this educational aspect or some type of connection to people who are stuck at home through this virtual programming. And it's just not holistic. There's pieces that are missing, as much as we are delighted to provide that and have people experience it. They can't feel it and they can't smell it. There's something lacking in that. Which brings me to my first question for you. When you think about nature, what comes to mind for you?
I think it's changed over the years. Definitely, it used to be this idea of these huge open spaces, forest, and a lot of times I think as a child, like going out in nature was getting away from a city and getting away from other people and just being outdoors. And then as I think been able to experience nature in many different forms now, I think nature to me is really a state of mind. And, not to get too philosophical, but it's really this idea that we can experience anytime we're outdoors. And now when I think of my childhood experiences in nature, it's really about those moments that I remember walking along the Arroyo Seco and kicking sycamore leaves around. And then that smell, there's that so familiar smell of sycamore leaves. And just, after they've been decomposing for a little while, and there's something you get when it's, when there's mulch and there's, just that wonderful smell mulch brings, but there's something very specific about just sycamore leaves and the sound of the leaves, that just the rustling of the leaves on the ground as you're a kid just kicking and stomping through them. And growing up, I never thought that was my nature experience, and those are the things that actually stand out to me more as an adult. Even though I've been to many national parks and forests, and it's just kind of interesting on how these ideas change. So definitely when I think of nature, I think of experiences of actually connecting to the land and to other people and other, like, just different, wildlife and all that sort of goodness that you find outdoors.
It's funny, we've asked that question several times now. We always start with that in these interviews. And it's funny because I tend to listen to these different experiences and I connect on some level. But when you talk about sycamore specifically, I grew up in Indiana, and I grew up in the countryside. And sycamores, Indiana actually has an anthem, and it talks about the sycamores. And it was a big part of, my childhood was, if we went to the river, there's always sycamore growing along the river. There was always sycamore in our backyard. And when you talk about that smell and that sound and the crunch in the late summer, early fall,
Yeah,
the crunch of those leaves, all that's so specific. And it's funny because traveling to California was a very different landscape, right, than I grew up with. But seeing that there's still sycamores, different sycamores, eastern, western,
yeah,
they're pretty similar. There's still sycamores growing along waterways. And it was such a kind of connection for me of home, of like, okay, this is something I can relate to, as I learned everything else about, California landscapes. So it's funny, that really brings me back to my own childhood, thinking about that.
yeah. And who would, yeah, I think it's at this point, like, just, I grew up in Highland Park, Northeast LA, and growing up on the LA River and hanging out on Arroyo Seco today is somewhat of a hip thing. It's just like folks are down there and it's cool, and that's awesome. But when I was growing up, that's where we were going to get away from, parents. We were getting away from, law enforcement. Not that we were bad kids. It was just, just to be alone. And those are the memories that kind of come up for me when I think about nature and just how it got started. And yeah, sycamores are definitely a very huge part of that growing up. And of course, at that time, I didn't know that I was playing in sycamore leaves. It was just, these big trees. But yeah, it's really cool.
So fast forward, can you talk about the work you're doing now and how you got there?
So the work I'm doing now is I direct a nature center, and we're part of National Audubon. We're one of the state programs, Audubon California, and the Audubon Center at Debs Park specifically was built to really serve the community. There was a lot of work that was happening that was connecting youth to outdoor experiences, but a lot of those experiences were taking them out of the neighborhood and down to, Bayona and down to the coast, which are amazing, beautiful locations. But when you're living in Northeast LA and you have a resource like Debs Park, why would you go and explore Bayona before you explored your backyard or your own resource? So there was a team of folks that really advocated to get a center open. And at the time, the center strategy was open them everywhere. And I'm glad that they did, because it was definitely, the area has been part of my childhood. I tell the story where my parents actually met 1 block from Debs Park at the bus stop. And, Latona Elementary, I graduated from there. My siblings graduated from there. My uncles graduated from there. It just, that whole area is a really big part of my life. So now working there has really allowed me to not just connect the community to outdoor space, but really to reconnect my family to our own neighborhood. Because there's so much going on where we can forget that, and we can forget what's in our backyard because we're so busy trying to explore the world and do it all that we forget these resources that we have. And I feel that if it's anything, or if the pandemic has taught us anything, or at least taught me anything, is that the things that I cherished the most today were things that I was taking advantage of this whole time. And that's the ability to go out on a walk and look at birds. When they tell me to stay home, I'm like, what do you mean I can't look at birds? So I'm like looking at birds outside in my backyard now, and I'm grateful that I have a backyard where I can do that. But it's also connecting with family. It's like, stay at home and work. When am I ever going to get that order again? Like, you have to stay with your family. And I was so used to, wow, I'm working this hard and I'm doing this much work and I'm away from my family so much to do this work because of my family, because I want to be able to provide and share all this with them. And now we're at a point where it's like, okay, well, you wanted your family here. You may not like why, but here you go. So I'm just really looking at that in a positive way. And the work that I'm able to do at the center is continue to share that. And it is a bit more virtual, but a lot of the work that we're doing now at Debs is looking at ways to provide resources for our partners and connections, so they can continue this journey just virtually. And again, it's like, you're teaching a gardening class, and we're talking about propagating native plants in a nursery, and we're in the nursery. But the idea is that we're able to share enough that may encourage someone to actually start thinking about these things when they go out, because we know folks are out. We know, like, I see them hiking, I see them on the street, I see them riding bikes. Like, try to go buy a bicycle right now. Like, they're all sold out. So we know that we're outdoors and exploring. We just want to make sure that the interpretation and the connection to nature is there. So, just that whole process has allowed me to really get in a space where I'm able to do this now. And just really grateful for the opportunity.
Can I ask, what is the path that you followed or that led you to where you are now? Did you always think you'll be working for Audubon or in the field of environmentalism?
No, not at all. I mean, this work was never something that I thought was accessible, because I didn't see folks like me doing this work. If you looked like me, you were either outside cleaning something, or you were outside building something.
Or a different type of gardener.
And yeah, it's a very, very different type of gardener. I come from a family of painters, not like not muralist or fine arts, but
that's
like
what
literally.
I thought, because I come from a family of muralists.
Yeah, no. So we were painting houses. My grandfather painted houses, and his father painted houses. My father paints houses, but I'm a painter by trade. Learned how to paint all throughout my teenage years, and I was not really thinking that it's not like if I was on that path to become a painter, but I was definitely not against it, because I saw the passion that my grandfather had for painting and the love he had for his work, and how he was able to provide for his family and buy his home down the street from Debs Park, where my grandma still lives today. I saw that connection. And then my father the same way, never complaining about his work. Maybe might mention how hot it was out because there was no turn on the AC when it's, 3 digits and you're, on a second story sanding overhang. Like, you just do it. So I think for me, the work that I was really, focused on doing was work that I could do and not really get to a point where it was going to make me upset or complain, because I've never heard my grandfather complain about working outdoors, and I never heard my father complain about working outdoors. So that work ethic stayed with me. And when I finally realized, like, in school that you could get paid to go outdoors, I ended up studying geology and anthropology, and there's field studies, and I'm like, wow, like I'm pretty much just camping. And I'm out here staring at rocks and staring at the fire, and I'm climbing trees, and whoa, you can get paid for this? They never shared how much, but it was something that I was now starting to think I could do. And I think for me, what really allowed me to get into this space was meeting people that had similar passion, that were just so passionate about what they were doing, they wanted to share it. And that's the same thing. You meet a tree person, or you meet a native plant person, or you meet a geologist, you meet a birder. You ask them one question, they're going to give you about 6 different answers, because they're so passionate about what they're actually doing. And I think that's what always has like energized me. So now when I go out there and really look at what I was doing, I mean, for a long time, I was just volunteering. I was just volunteering my time. And I think that was a joke in my family. It's just like, man, when are you going to start getting paid for this? And at the time, you know, I didn't have a family. I really didn't have any responsibilities. I was in a place where I was able to do a lot of that stuff. And I think the connections that I made, the relationships that were built in that process has allowed me to really step into a place, and then a lot of mentors. And it got to a place where I started to notice things about this field, and mainly the conservation movement as a whole, that there weren't a lot of folks that looked like me. And I started to notice there were things that I had to deal with that were specific to someone that looked like me. And what I'm talking about are, you know, it's what it's like being a person of color working in a field dominated by middle to upper class white retired people. And, you know, I always say, I'm just like, yeah, when you think of a conservationist or environmentalist, you're not thinking of me. And you know, I'm pretty much clean shaven now, but before, you know, that big beard, now I'm starting to see a shift. And the experience that comes with being a person of color in this country is now being valued, because conservation is being done in a very different way. Before, conservation was just considered saving Yosemite or saving the Joshua Tree or saving, you know, a national forest. Now conservation can be applied to the urban area. And the mainstream conservation, you know, movement does not know how to do that work. So it's like really the first time you are now starting to see these conservation organizations hiring community organizers. Like, what? So just having this experience and, you know, growing up, going to school. I mean, I grew up in Northeast LA, but I had gone to school down in Watts, you know, throughout the 90s after the uprising. And a lot of the teachers were giving us an education that really allowed us to see these things. And you know, more often they're telling me, hey, Marcus, you need to get serious. And hey, you need to step up. You know, you're always going to have to work harder, and not really understanding what they meant. And when I finally got it, I was able to really tap into all of that knowledge that they were dropping and everything that they were sharing with us, which has allowed me to really bring these two fields, which is the conservation movement and social justice and environmental justice, together, and really adopt a holistic approach to this work. And it's been great. And the path has definitely been one that I feel that I have enjoyed, because I've always been passionate about what I'm doing. And that's the thing. Like, everywhere I've worked, I've been committed, and I've always been down with the missions. I've always been down with just the strategies. But I've always let them know, or just let the organization know, that my accountability is to my community. So whenever we're able to really look at these missions and where we fit in as a community, there's awesome stuff that can happen.
Yeah, it's funny. You remind me of, like, when I was working in construction when we first met. And we were doing Angelus restoration with two people, and you were a supervisor of that project. And you know, I unlike your father and grandfather, I actually did complain a lot about working in construction. I was grateful for the income, grateful to have work, but what I loved doing was being out in the mountains, planting trees in the city, planting anywhere,
Yeah.
and especially trees. And one of the questions I would ask myself throughout my life, just when I'm kind of making these decisions, is, what would I do if I didn't have to make a living? If I could just wake up tomorrow and suddenly I don't have to worry about that, what would I do? What would I do differently?
Yeah.
And it was Paloma one day who said, what you do all the time that no one pays you for. I was like, no, what? You're in the garden. You're planting trees. You go out the mountain, you plant trees whenever you have time. And it's funny because I've only found myself in that place recently where that's actually become my livelihood. And that's an exciting possibility when those things match up like that. What we have another question. Where are we at? Community, right. So if you could, I know you've already talked a little bit about how you connect to the community at Debs Park. Maybe you can talk more broadly or more in detail about how you work with the community that you're in and how you serve each other, how you serve your community, how that community supports the work that you do.
Yeah, sure. It's a really good question, and I feel that any organization, any individual should ask themselves that question. And I feel based off of those answers, you're able to align yourself in how you can approach the community, and I feel because in every relationship, there's this exchange. Like understanding what that exchange is, I think is really important, because traditionally we look at organizations that always feel they have something to offer. And if you ever looked at grant proposals, like the organization's offering the world, and that's why they need that money, because they're bringing so much to the community. And there's certain terms that are used, like at-risk youth and underserved and underprivileged and all this stuff. What I feel that we've done in a way that is pushing back on that idea is we ended up getting to a point where we had to look at who needs who more. And when we were able to really get to that point of reflection, and like as an organization, we had to acknowledge, Audubon need the community more than the community needed Audubon. And what that means is that we were able to look at how we were offering programming, the programming that we were offering, and the way that we were doing it needed to shift. Because traditionally the idea in conservation is if you build it, they will come. And we say that with birds. You put a bird feeder out, you build it, they will come. And for the most part, it works out. But when we're looking at community work and involvement, it was not working how we wanted it to, and how we needed it. And really what happened is you end up getting the community as part of the organization. And now when I think of the community and how we serve the community, I think of myself, not in a selfish reason, but I think of my family. Like, I am the community. I'm part of the community. So it's a very different approach. And one of the things that we like to look at in conservation is you study conservation, you study environmental science, you study biology, you can do that stuff anywhere. For the most part, you can think of all the beautiful places in the world, and that's where you could do it, right? Now, we're looking at this community organizing piece. And just because you study biology back east or, down south or in California, doesn't mean that you're going to be able to do conservation work in the community someplace else. because urban conservation is done very differently. And it takes community to build community. So now we've, after really acknowledging that we need the community, now I'm speaking with the Audubon hat, needing the community more than the community needs us. Our conversation was very different. And we're not just coming and bringing all these stories. It's more of building relationships around the assets that we have, which was a physical building, a space. Look, we have this space, but if no one's using it, who cares if we have the space? We have all this knowledge on how to advocate for birds and connect with the environment. But if no one's coming by, who cares? So it was really, reevaluating our approach. And the other thing that we were able to do in terms of community building is, when you think of conservation and when you think of outdoor activities and what is the outdoors, you're, for the most part, always really, maybe not you two, but for a lot of folks think about hiking. They think about kayaking down the river. They think about mountain biking. They think about all these activities that are exclusive to a group of people. Culturally, when we think of outdoors, we think of sitting under a tree, cooking up carne asada, and hanging out with our family. We don't typically think about conquering a mountain, especially if you're my father or my grandfather who's worked outdoors 6 days a week. You think the last thing he's going to want to do is go on a 10-mile hike in the hot sun. This is the one day he's going to be able to kick back and see his family and relax. So usually it's watching TV, right? But it's this idea of who is outdoors. And I hear it across the country where, we don't see people of color outdoors. If we're not outdoors, where are we? You know what I mean? It's just that we may not see we may not see people of color outdoors doing the same stuff that white folks are doing, or doing the stuff that conservationists deem worthy of doing. So one thing we had to do is shift the perception on what is considered a valid use of outdoor space. Because you walk through the doors of the Audubon, it's like, wow. And we get a lot of that. It's just like, next question is, Marcos, how much does it cost? It's like, oh, come on, it's free. And then it's, well, what do you do now? When my kids first went there, they're looking for the swing set, the slides, all of that stuff. Usually, well, you go sit down on that rock and you wait for some birds to show up. And that is supposed to be considered outdoors and an outdoor activity. So the thing is that we have these ideas of what outdoor space is. And now what we do is we make sure that we're valuing everyone's use of outdoor space. And if it looks different from what we want to share, we share with the same passion. And maybe they'll check it out. Maybe they'll borrow a backpack with some binoculars and field guides, and we can have that exchange. Maybe after that, they're like, okay, I see what it is. I'm going to go back to the other side of Debs Park and start the carne asada, because that might just be a cooler way to do things. The thing is, how do we serve these different groups with different activities that are culturally relevant? Because there's a wealth of knowledge and beauty and just this awareness that everyone brings that we almost, forget to acknowledge. So that's one thing that we're really looking at. And it's getting back to being inclusive with the outdoor space, making sure it's safe for everyone, making sure that we're doing what we can to reincorporate the indigenous voice back into our space. We're calling up the elders and saying, hey, you know what? We're open. We want you to participate. What are some things that we can do to really make this space welcoming again? Because that was one of the things. It's just like you go to a museum and you see an exhibit or you hear something, but I always looked at it, I'm like, wow, like I go to a museum to see dinosaurs and these rocks that have been collected. I don't go to a museum to see culture. I'll go to, wherever those people are to see the culture. And unfortunately for a lot of indigenous folks, like, we've taken that from them. We haven't allowed them to exhibit their culture, it's not even that they need our permission or we need to allow them. It's that we just need to be welcoming into that space because so much was taken from them. So those are some of the things we're looking at, and what we try to keep in mind at Debs definitely is really to remain teachable, because we don't have it all figured out. We're learning, but we want to have a holistic approach to everything that we are working on, just within the culture conservation movement, and as well as providing a platform for us to be able to connect conservationists with the community who may not see themselves as an environmentalist, as a conservationist. But when you look at carbon footprint across the board, the communities we serve have the lowest carbon footprint. So when, they may not have the training on how to be a conservationist, but they're the ones that are saving the most water. They're the ones that are recycling. They're the ones that are not putting all of those carbon emissions out in the environment. So it's interesting on how we view the community and how we serve it.
I like how, for me, you connected this idea of community organizing and conservation. What I love about community organizing, especially in this work, is that we're not going into communities and informing them what they lack, informing them what they need. We're going in and saying, just as you said, there's so many assets here and so much talent. How can we work together to empower each other? And I absolutely love nonprofits that take people of color and take them out to the mountains and let people of color experience these new things. But I also love organizations that are telling people you don't have to go out to see nature. You are in it all of the time. Let's let it grow. Let's let it grow more richer and fuller in an empty lot.
Yeah.
In a place where you can learn more about birding and animal tracks and the indigenous people who have been here for centuries and thousands of years. And it's not out there. It's everywhere, and we are in it. So I just really admire everything that you've been doing in that aspect too. And our last question for you, and also a reminder to anyone watching, feel free to ask questions for Marcos as well. Just type it in the chat. What is your personal hope and vision for the future that you see before you?
I think at the moment, my hope is that folks are able to maybe take a step back in focusing too much on the future, but really look at the present, and again, look at what are some of the basic things that we can really incorporate in our lives today. And this is a great moment in really being able to practice that. And for me, I honestly believe that everyone has this basic goodness. And if we can tap into that basic goodness, not just in ourselves, because we can always think, and it may be easier to tap into that or forgive ourselves for some of the things we've done. But if we could start forgiving other people, and if we can acknowledge the basic goodness in everyone, and it's like everyone, and I know how hard that can be, it's going to say more about us than the person that we're actually looking to forgive. And I feel if we can learn from that and that exchange, that we're not going to have a problem. I know usually folks talk about, oh, well, I hope we're going to, be able to save the planet and this and that. I'm not worried about the planet. It's warming up, it's cooling down. It's, I look at it as in a geological timescale. I mean, it's warmed up and cooled down a whole lot. And what I'm looking at is how we're able to adapt and how we're able to make the adjustments we need to as a human race, as a species on this planet, to coexist, not just with these other species, but with ourselves. We're our biggest threat. And if we can learn to reconnect, I feel that's going to be the best thing, for this planet, for us. We're really getting to a point where we need to see how we're going to be able to continue. And if we don't treat each other like if we want to continue, then we'll continue down this path, which is obviously not what anyone really wants to see. But I feel all the work that we're doing in conservation, all the habitat restoration, all the science work, to me is a form of healing. And for me, what it really is about, the habitat restoration is about putting it, plants in the ground and having that connection, but it's really about restoring the connection back to people and the land. And I think that my main hope is for folks to really make that connection so they can share it and have that continue.
One of the thoughts Paloma and I talk about often is, so places like Debs Park, Audubon Center, and Arlington are doing work here in the city to make the city to do what you're talking about, which is making that personal connection of people to land, but the land that actually needs us the most, and the land that we could actually benefit from the most, which is the land that's right in front of us, right under us, right here in the city, the land that's been so devastated by human interaction, right? Which is a feedback, right? Our human relationships are reflected in the landscape we live in, right? And so, we talk about this idea of like, maybe we take advantage of the fact that the redwood forest is still available to us and split. Just go live in the redwood forest while we can, right? Go to these beautiful places that still exist, which is the history of modern conservation, is this idea that we're going to conserve this beautiful space elsewhere, right? Somewhere else where people don't live. Whereas I think what the conservation that you're describing, which is urban conservation, is talking about how do we make a space where humans live habitable, not just for plants, not just for the birds, but when it's habitable for the plants and the birds, it is more habitable for humans.
Yeah, we
have better relationships, right?
No, definitely.
So it's an exciting idea to do that work.
Yeah, and we need more examples of it, and that's the thing with anytime we're dealing with a huge population that we have, and all these things about freedom of liberties and in the world, it's we're gonna have to learn to get along. And some people might think this is a completely bogus idea, and I know a lot of those folks that if there is a unpaved surface, the first thing they'll do is pave it so they don't have to clean it or they don't have to wet it. And you know what? I can't argue with them. All I can do is really continue to show, how I'd like to do things and share the passion that I have behind that. Because if anyone tried to change my mind about how I feel, they're going to have a hard time. So again, it's like acknowledging this basic goodness in everyone, and really for me not to take it so personally when my neighbor paves over his lawn. I know he didn't do it because he wanted to get me upset.
He was mad at you.
Yeah, he was mad at me.
Yeah, I think showing example. I mean, I think that's critical. I think I see the impact in working with schools, for example, on school campuses. When you show people what's possible, just a little corner, right? Which is always where the school garden is, in some forgotten little corner.
Yeah.
But when people see season after season what's happening there, a lot of people connect with that. Not everyone, but a lot of people see it and they get it.
Yeah.
They pick a fig off of that tree on any given day and it clicks.
Yeah.
Something that wasn't there before, right? And for some people, that's we were talking about memories earlier. Mm-hmm. I teach at a school where a lot of folks are coming from the Middle East. So they may have spent their childhood there. Mm-hmm. The fig tree is at the center of that. So when they come out to the fig tree, which is actually a remnant, it was there from a growing ground from a nursery before the school was there. This fig grew into the ground, probably out of a box, and it's there. And this time of year, usually when we return to school, people come out to the fig tree and they eat that fig and they tell me stories of their childhood, thousands of miles away, where they had this experience.
Isn't that awesome?
It's amazing.
No,
and to have that opportunity, right? Which is all it is. Our school decided to create that space where people could come out and have that experience, right? Which is a different experience when you're on pavement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So just looking like Debs Park in Arlington they're just offering opportunities for people to actually experience a different thing.
And yeah, and it's so amazing because I mean, even just this idea of studying anthropology and being able to pass these ideas along. Folks have their reasoning for why they would want to do things or why they would want to play. Like maybe they're coming from a place that they don't want to remember, and not having pavement is going to remind them of a place that they don't want to remember. So there's, for me, I have to remember all these things. Eating a fig might not trigger a good memory for everyone. So, yeah, it's just, I find it just so fascinating on all these different interactions that you can get. I just feel that it's important for places like Debs and Arlington to be open to having, these gathering places where folks can come out and share these experiences. And then again, that's the idea that, our goal is to make sure that these places are safe for everyone, that they're available to everyone. And unfortunately, we have our work cut out because some believe that it's not. It shouldn't be available. So we'll see what we can do and continue to support this idea that we can continue to heal with these outdoor spaces.
That's a wonderful sentiment. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just one last, you were talking about Debs Park being open. So
in theory,
Arlington is open. We ask that people wear masks, practice social distancing. If this crowd gets too big or people aren't respectful of that space, then that might change. But for the moment, we're still open and free to the public. And is Debs Park Audubon Center open or?
So Debs Park hiking trails are open. So Ernest E. Debs Park, there's a number of hiking trails. Monterey Road is open where you can drive your car up and park. For Griffin, the pedestrian gate is open, and that stays open. The center will be closed, or it has been closed since about February, and will be closed at least into the beginning of the year. A lot of this is because of COVID, but now what we're doing is taking this opportunity to have a few renovations and things done to the center. We just had our children's woodland trails redone, and we're in the process of having our permits completed to have the roof redone, and we're replacing the solar panel system completely. So yeah, it's gonna be awesome once we're able to reopen and just really reimagine the space. Working on a few big projects, so we'll be happy to share that when we're able to. But again, yeah, we'll be closed.
But that's exciting. I can't wait to come visit when it opens again and see all the new improvements.
Yeah. The bird blind is still doing
That's right.
what it was designed to do.
I'm happy to hear that.
We've had one question from our mutual friend Scott Oshima.
All right, Scott.
Hi, Scott. Scott says, please tell the story of how you named your child after Paloma before having met her. I did not know about this.
That's funny. No, really, that's awesome. I think when we were looking at names, just for me, Paloma, it's Paloma ZG, and ZG is a Tibetan Buddhist name. It's abiding confidence, and it means elegance and splendor. And at the time, I was living in Alaska, working in the Tongass forest, and really just getting the news that I was going to be a father, and sitting out there with big Sitka spruce and western hemlock trees. And I remember there was one night I can hear humpback whales, singing. And, I was like, wow, like 27, just really thinking, what am I going to do with my life? And how am I going to be able to show up for this child that we're going to be bringing? And I immediately thought or felt this serenity and this peace, knowing that it was going to be all right, and I didn't have to go down that crazy road that most of us parents go down when we're like, oh my God, like I barely know how to take care of myself. How am I going to take care of this little person? But just knowing that my parents had done the best that they can with what they had, and having them in my corner always, with unconditional love, I felt this peace and this serenity, and really looking at the dove as that symbolism. So yeah, it just naturally led to Paloma, and then ZG was just everything that I was putting into, in terms of all this energy and intention. And it was funny because I would tell these, like, yeah, this is, I want you to meet someone. They're like, wow, you're going to give this child a complex before they even get a chance to get out there. They're like, so much to live up to in a name.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing everything with us. It's been really inspiring.
Yeah, thanks.
Always good to talk with you.
It's awesome to connect with you both, and again, thank you for thinking of us, and always being willing to support what we have going on.
Thank you, and have a good day and good luck with homeschooling tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks. We're going to need it. Send some help. All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.